£6,000 to £8,000.
Really?
The rarest discoveries on Antiques Roadshow aren't always the most expensive. They're the treasures experts spend an entire career hoping to see just once. Welcome to our channel. Today, we're counting down the most incredible once-in-a-lifetime discoveries ever revealed on Antiques Roadshow. Before we begin, subscribe and ring the bell for more unbelievable hidden treasure stories. After exploring relics from modern wars, we're about to travel much farther back in time. Not 1 century, not 2, but nearly 500 years. The next object wasn't discovered at an auction or purchased from an antique shop. It has remained in the same family for more than half a millennium.
This is your ancestral home.
My family lived here for 550 years till 1946. Some of the contents were removed by my grandfather when he gave Lyme away. And it passed to my father and then has come down to me now.
That story alone makes this artifact remarkable. It isn't simply an antique. It is a piece of family history, carefully preserved and passed down through generation after generation. But what truly caught the experts' attention was the dagger itself.
We've banded agate, and then we've got the use of carnelian. This is a dagger, but it's terribly elegant. It's actually so finely made that it couldn't really be used in anger.
Right.
Banded agate, carnelian, silver. Every detail suggests that this was never intended for the battlefield. It was created to display wealth, refinement, and social status, rather than to serve as a practical weapon. Then the family shared a tradition that made the story even more intriguing.
Well, the family tradition is that it belonged to King Charles I.
Indeed, there is the name in Latin, Carolus, but I have to ask myself, is it Charles I?
If that tradition were true, this would be a royal artifact. But the expert refused to jump to conclusions. Instead, he carefully examined every clue, separating family legend from historical evidence. Even so, the results were remarkable.
We think this is a 16th century piece because its manufacturer is almost certainly Italy. It's a serious European work of art. The lapidary work is absolutely fabulous.
Although its connection to King Charles I could not be confirmed, the dagger's true origins were extraordinary. It was crafted in 16th century Italy. Not merely an antique weapon, but a genuine Renaissance work of art.
I think an auction estimate would have to be between £15,000 and £25,000.
Really? Yeah.
An auction estimate of £15,000 to £25,000 reflected the significance of an artifact that has survived for nearly 5 centuries. Yet perhaps the most memorable part of this story wasn't the valuation. It was seeing a dagger that might appear to be a weapon at first glance, ultimately recognized as a rare and exceptional masterpiece of European Renaissance craftsmanship. We've officially reached the top 10, and the next case begins in a way that will feel very familiar to longtime Antiques Roadshow viewers. An old box, a forgotten piece of jewelry, and a family that knew almost nothing about where it came from. After their mother passed away, the family began sorting through years of stored keepsakes and personal belongings. Among the various small boxes was a piece of jewelry that nobody could remember ever seeing before. It had spent years sitting quietly out of sight. No one knew its history, and no one was even certain it was genuine.
When our mother died, because my sister here, we went through sort of various little boxes and things of nothing in particular, and we each had a choice, and this was my choice. And I mean, I don't even know if it's real. We never saw it. My mother never wore it.
At that point, it sounded like the beginning of countless other family heirloom stories. But within moments, the expert knew he was looking at something far more interesting.
Yes, well, it certainly is real, actually. It's a most fascinating jewel.
The piece wasn't actually made during the 18th century. Instead, it belonged to the 19th century revival of 18th century French jewelry, a period when designers looked back to the elegance and craftsmanship of an earlier age for inspiration. Blue enamel, diamonds, rubies, an intricate gold framework. and hidden on the reverse was a small locket compartment designed to hold a photograph or even a lock of hair from someone dearly loved. This wasn't simply jewelry created to be worn, it was jewelry created to preserve memories.
Is inspired by 18th century France. But we can say with absolute confidence this isn't an 18th century jewel, it's an 18th century revival one. And blue enamel, diamonds, a little ruby in the front, and turn it over and there's a locket at the back.
But the surprises didn't end there. Accompanying the locket was a remarkable bead brooch created by La Cloche Frères, one of France's most prestigious jewelry houses and a direct competitor to Cartier during the golden age of French luxury jewelry.
It's absolutely there. They're a very distinguished firm running in competition with Cartier.
Set with Salon sapphires, diamonds, ruby eyes, and brought to life through an incredibly dynamic design, the brooch quickly became the star of the appraisal.
And everybody wants this thing, honestly they do, and value is to do with measured want, that's all that value is, and I'm going to tell you that in measured want that's £10,000.
God.
The locket didn't reach quite that level, but even it delivered a valuation that left the family stunned.
Bigger, but quite enough at, say, £4,500–5,000.
Not bad at all for a piece that spent years forgotten inside a family box. And it's exactly the kind of discovery that has made Antiques Roadshow famous for uncovering hidden treasures in the most unexpected places. The deeper we move into today's countdown, the more the pieces begin to resemble museum treasures rather than ordinary jewelry. And the next discovery may be one of the best examples yet. At first glance, it's easy to understand why this piece remained treasured within the family for so many years. Its presence is impossible to ignore.
Well, I know that it was most probably acquired by my grandparents. My grandfather was a well-known goldsmith and silversmith in the early part of this century. I think that's older. He obviously simply acquired it, I imagine, because he fell in love with it.
And honestly, it's difficult to disagree. The piece immediately draws attention. Rich enamel work, green gold paradots, intricate decorative details, and a style that feels as though it belongs in a royal collection rather than a family jewelry box. This wasn't the kind of jewelry created to blend in. It was designed to stand out.
Well, I can quite see why you would. And, well, it's a stunning example of Victorian jewellery at its absolute best. And it's a type of jewellery that's often called Holbeinesque. There was a fashion throughout England in the 1860s to emulate the Elizabethan age.
The piece was created during a period when Victorian Britain became fascinated with Tudor and Renaissance history. Jewelry makers weren't simply producing fashionable accessories. They were attempting to recreate the grandeur and romance of earlier centuries through precious materials, vibrant colors, and extraordinary craftsmanship. The result was jewelry that felt historic even when it was brand new. And this piece captures that spirit perfectly.
And what a wonderful thing it is. It's in pristine condition. I think what's interesting to know about Howell & James is that it was a very famous firm. What date do you assume it was?
Well, I had been told it was about 1870, and again the term Holbeinesque was applied to it, but any more than that we knew nothing else. I don't know if it's even ever been worn. That may explain its pristine condition.
But beauty alone wasn't what impressed the expert. Condition played a major role as well. After roughly 150 years, the piece had survived in remarkably preserved condition, something collectors are always eager to find. The combination of age, craftsmanship, rarity, and preservation made it stand out immediately. And then came the valuation.
A specialist auction. One could expect to pay £8,000 for it, and if somebody was really greedy, perhaps £10,000 for such a dazzling example.
Gosh.
Throughout the appraisal, one word kept coming up: dazzling. And after hearing a valuation that could reach £10,000, it's difficult to think of a more fitting description. A spectacular survivor from the Victorian era, and another unforgettable discovery in today's countdown. From Giuliano, we move to an even bigger name. A name associated with Paris, with European royalty, and even with Napoleon Bonaparte himself. At first, the story begins in a surprisingly ordinary way. A simple blue leather box arrives at the appraisal table. But as Antiques Roadshow has proven time and time again, sometimes the most important detail isn't the jewelry itself. It's the name inside the lid.
The name in the lid is Chaumet. Do you know, have you heard of this firm Chaumet before?
Yes.
What do you know about Chaumet?
They're a really old company, and I believe they still are going.
They are?
I think I've seen adverts in Vogue as well.
Well, they are a really important company, and believe it or not, do you know who their best first customer was? Napoleon Bonaparte.
With that single revelation, the significance of the piece changed immediately. Chaumet is far more than a luxury jewelry brand. It is one of the most prestigious jewelry houses in French history, famous for serving royalty, aristocrats, and some of Europe's most influential families for generations. For collectors, the Chaumet name alone commands attention.
They made an awful lot of jewelry for royal families. They made tiaras. So any jewelry that is made by a firm of this stature is going to have a significance about it.
What makes this discovery especially interesting is that the necklace isn't centuries old. It dates from the 1960s. That may sound relatively modern compared to some of the pieces we've already seen today, but jewelry from the 1950s and 1960s has become increasingly desirable in recent years. And when a respected name like Chaumet is attached to the piece, demand rises even further.
It's actually signed Chaumet. It was made in Paris, and it's been brought into this country, and the hallmark is London, 1966.
Oh, right, okay.
Now, jewelry made in the 50s and 60s is very in at the moment.
There was another factor working in its favor. The jewelry set was not actually complete. Part of it was still in the possession of the owner's aunt, which meant the overall value could potentially be even higher if the pieces were reunited. By this stage, the appraisal was no longer simply about a beautiful necklace. It was about a highly collectible piece from one of the great names in jewelry history.
Factoring in all that I've said, being Chaumet and so very in at the moment, £6,000 to £8,000.
Really? Gosh.
And furthermore, you know your aunt's got the earrings. As a set, £8,000 to £10,000.
Thank you so much.
A beautiful necklace, a legendary jewelry house, and a valuation that could reach £10,000 if the complete set were brought together. That's more than enough to secure Chaumet a place among the leading discoveries in today's countdown.
Now, the sight of a box like this often heralds the fact that it contains something by Fabergé. And when we open it up like this, we can see that it's certainly Russian, but not necessarily by Fabergé.
From the moment the box was opened, the expert realized this was not an ordinary diamond ring. In the world of antique jewelry, small details like a box, a signature, or the name of a maker can reveal a lot about the origin of a piece. At first, the ring brought to mind high-end Russian jewelry from the early 20th century. But the story behind it was what made the piece even more fascinating.
Well, I'm surprised you said Russian, actually, because I inherited it from my mother-in-law, and her father, I understand, bought it when the Romanian royal family had to sell all their jewels and they were no longer becoming royal and they were sent out to Romania. So I suppose I sort of thought that writing on the box was Romanian.
For many years, the family believed the ring had a special past, but they could not fully confirm the story. For jewelry connected to aristocratic families, provenance can be just as important as the materials or gemstones. The box suggested a connection to luxury Russian jewelry from the early 20th century, a period when Russian jewelers were known for pieces created for nobility and royalty. And when the expert examined it more closely, the clues on the box began to reveal more about its journey.
Well, it's certainly in Cyrillic, and actually I think what it does say is that it's retailed by a jeweller called Malkanar, and then underneath of Odessa. And I think we can be absolutely sure that this is contemporary with Fabergé, not only from the style of the box, but also from the style of the ring.
Although it was not made by Fabergé, the ring still belonged to the same era of luxurious Russian jewelry. The combination of elegant design, precious materials, and fine craftsmanship showed that this was a piece made for someone extremely wealthy. But for the owner, the most important question was whether the family story was actually true.
And I can't see much hope of buying a Russian ring like that really for much less than about 7,000, 8,000, 9,000 pounds.
Well, that's very reassuring.
Although the original owner could not be identified, the quality of the craftsmanship suggested it almost certainly belonged to someone of high status. From a family piece with a mysterious origin, the ring became a small connection to the history and world of European aristocratic jewellery.
Well, when we first found it among my mother's effects, my daughter was looking at it and she said, "That's Russian, I'm sure it says Fabergé." And I thought, I can't believe that, because I've no idea where it could have come from in our family.
At first, this seemed like another family piece that had been kept for years without a clear history. But in the world of antiques, small details can sometimes reveal more than the object itself. In this case, a tiny clue connected to the original case began to uncover a much bigger story.
And she was absolutely bang on, because in the lid satin it says K. Fabergé, St. Petersburg, Moscow and Odessa.
A few letters that could have easily been overlooked became the most important discovery of the appraisal. To most people, it was just a small marking inside an old box. But to the expert, it immediately suggested one of the most legendary names in jewellery history.
Because it jolly well is. I mean, it's really an extraordinarily wonderful find, really. See that funny little hallmark there? It stands quite simply for Carl Fabergé.
That was the moment everything changed. Fabergé is admired not only for precious materials, but also for exceptional craftsmanship, history, and its connection to the luxurious world of European collectors and royalty. For antique jewelry enthusiasts, the Fabergé name alone carries enormous importance.
And it gives a sequence of numbers which refer to stock books. I've actually had the time to look at the London stock books and check whether this jewel is in there.
What made this discovery even more special was that the brooch's history could be supported by original records. In the antique market, strong provenance can transform an object because it confirms the story and heritage behind the piece.
Today, I think it might be worth £8,000.
And a week at the knees, good gracious.
The biggest surprise was that this secret had stayed with the family for years without anyone realizing its true significance. One tiny detail inside an old case helped reveal the real story behind the brooch. And the next item in today's countdown continues into the world of luxury jewelry, where a small collection brings together some of the most prestigious names in European craftsmanship. Some pieces of jewelry are valuable because they have been passed down through a family for generations, but this bracelet is far stranger than that. Hidden inside it may be fragments of material almost 2,000 years old. At first glance, it looks like an unusual antique bracelet. But when the expert studies the gold mounts and the small pieces of glass, the story immediately splits into two timelines. The bracelet itself belongs to the Georgian period, while the glass reaches much further back.
The gold mounts with the fittings and the composition, which is a very classical shape, would have been made in the Georgian period. It dates from the end of the 18th century or perhaps around about 1800. Prior to that, they hadn't been made since Roman times.
In other words, the bracelet was assembled at the end of the 18th century, but the glass inside it is not Victorian glass or 19th century Venetian glass. These are fragments of Roman glass. What had come down through the family as a small piece of jewelry was actually carrying traces of the ancient Roman world.
So what we're looking at is a collection of fragments of Roman glass mounted together at the end of the 18th century. It's just come down in the family as a little piece of jewelry.
Those pieces of glass may once have belonged to bowls, jugs, or vessels. After centuries underground, glass decomposes and develops a silvery iridescence. Collectors then polish the fragments again, allowing the colors inside to reappear. And when the expert says they may date from around the 1st century AD, the bracelet stops being ordinary jewelry.
They all date from around about the 1st century AD. So we're going back to almost 2 millenniums, I suppose, ago.
Inside it are techniques such as millefiori and latticino, glass-making methods the Romans once mastered and that were later forgotten for a very long time. So the value comes from both sides, rare Roman glass and the way those fragments were mounted into an elegant Georgian jewel.
Well, there's this one here, that's millefiori, individual canes. And next to it, even more remarkable, we've got latticino.
Then came the final number, and it was enough to make the owner almost afraid to wear it again.
Somewhere perhaps 6,000 to 10,000 pounds.
Heavens.
It's just lovely.
It's beautiful. I definitely won't wear it now.
A family bracelet had become a 6,000 pounds to 10,000 pounds piece of jewelry, holding fragments of glass nearly 2,000 years old. And this is the kind of case that makes people wonder, how many old jewelry boxes are hiding a history far older than anything their owners ever imagined? This next case begins with a ring that many people might judge only by looking at the diamonds. How large are the stones? Would it be worth more if they were removed and turned into something modern? But in antique jewelry, sometimes the greatest value is not found by changing a piece. It is found in everything the piece has managed to keep. Because this ring does not only carry diamonds, it carries a family story, a connection to the past, and a small piece of the Victorian era that survived for more than a century.
The ring belonged to my great-grandmother.
Who happens to be this lady here?
That's that lady there, yes.
In her court dress, perhaps, with fine lace and pearls, and that signals a pretty elevated status, doesn't it?
She was married to a guy called Clement Smith, and he was Queen Victoria's vicar.
Those few details immediately changed the story behind this ring. It was no longer just an old piece of jewelry. It belonged to a real person with a family history and a connection to the world of Queen Victoria through Clement Smith. But its value was not because it was a royal artifact. What fascinated the expert was how much of its original identity had survived. This is a Victorian 5-stone diamond ring, a 19th century style where multiple diamonds work together instead of relying on one large center stone. Over time, many antique rings have been altered. The stones are removed, recut, or placed into modern settings because people believe that will make them more valuable. But once that happens, something impossible to replace disappears: the original history. This ring was special because it still kept the setting, craftsmanship, and feeling of the period when it was created. Collectors are not only looking for diamonds. They are looking for pieces that still carry their original story. That is why the expert did not see this as a ring that should be taken apart. He saw it as a piece of the 19th century that had survived almost exactly as it was meant to be.
And this would be a complete travesty because this is a mid-19th century ring, looking absolutely wonderful as it is. And I don't think anybody would dream much of doing that. So very pretty, original condition, enviable, marketable. So £3,000 to £5,000.
3,000 to 5,000 pounds. But the real lesson was not only about the price. The value came from the fact that the ring remained unchanged after more than 150 years. If someone removed the diamonds, the stones would still exist. But the story around them would disappear. And that is what makes this Victorian 5-stone diamond ring special. Sometimes in antiques, the most valuable thing is not making something look newer. It is protecting the history that is already there. After several 6-figure treasures, this case tells a different kind of story. No revolution. No famous celebrity. Just a small collection that once belonged to the owner's aunt, who married a wealthy Egyptian businessman in the 1940s. For many years, these pieces sat quietly in a safety deposit box.
Now, I'm assuming, therefore, that these would have been worn by someone who was in your family?
They were my aunt's, and she married a wealthy Egyptian in the 40s, and these were part of her treasure trove, I guess, from that period. These have been kept in a safety deposit box for many years, and just interested to find out a little bit of the history.
The collection consists of only 3 pieces: a powder compact, a cocktail watch, and a double-clip brooch. It doesn't sound like much, but each item carries a prestigious name behind it. The first piece appears elegant, decorated with small gold details and rubies. Then the appraiser opened it and spotted the name inside: Boucheron, Paris.
There we are. If I rub away at the edge, I can see a word there.
Yeah. Right.
And that word is Boucheron, Paris.
Wow.
Now, Boucheron is one of the great makers.
The watch proved to be equally impressive. It was a diamond-set cocktail watch, a style that became enormously popular during the years between the World Wars. And under closer inspection, the appraiser found the signature of one of the most respected watchmakers in the world.
This watch, when you look at it with a lens, It's signed Vacheron and Constantin, one of the great makers.
The final piece was an Art Deco double-clip brooch. This was exactly the kind of jewelry fashionable women loved to wear at the time. Looking at all three pieces together, the appraiser could almost picture their original owner.
So she'd go to this ball or function wearing her Vacheron diamond watch, her Boucheron powder compact, and her diamond double clips. She was some girl.
Then came the valuations.
This box is probably worth £1,000 to £1,500.
Wow.
Very good.
Something like that. The watch. Because it's by such a fine manufacturer, £3,000 to £4,000.
Wow.
I can tell you, having looked at them with my lens, they are beautiful. £8,000 to £10,000.
Wow.
Wow.
So combined value, £12,000 to £15,000.
Fantastic.
Amazing.
The collection carried a combined value of £12,000 to £15,000. Not the most expensive group of jewelry in the video, but it felt like a miniature time machine. With just 3 accessories, an entire era of elegant parties, cocktail watches, and Art Deco glamour seemed to come back to life. What if the most important baseball collection you've ever seen wasn't sitting in a museum or the Hall of Fame, but had remained in an ordinary family's possession for more than 140 years? That's exactly the story of Gail. When she arrived at the appraisal table, she brought only a few old baseball cards and a faded letter that had aged with time. At first glance, the collection looked surprisingly modest, but within seconds the expert realized this was anything but ordinary.
These are among the oldest baseball cards in existence.
The story begins in 1871. Gail's great-great-grandmother ran a boarding house in Boston. And the people staying there were not ordinary guests. They were members of the Boston Red Stockings, one of the earliest professional baseball teams in American history.
Back in 1871, my great-great-grandmother had a boarding house in Boston, and she housed the Boston baseball team.
The players lived there, shared meals there, and became part of the family's everyday life. Because of that connection, a young boy in the family began saving cards of the very players he saw on a regular basis. But the most remarkable item wasn't the cards. It was a letter.
While they were on a road trip in 1871 visiting the Washington Olympics, they got rained out, and they wrote her a letter at their boarding house telling her how much they missed her.
Just imagine that for a moment. An entire baseball team traveling on the road took the time to write to the woman who had cared for them. And on that letter were the signatures of nearly the entire roster. The signatures of men who helped lay the foundation for professional baseball in America.
Tremendous. To have anything with their signatures on it is phenomenal.
This wasn't simply sports memorabilia. It was a surviving piece of baseball's earliest history. And when the expert assembled everything into a single archive, the atmosphere immediately changed.
It is the greatest archive I have ever had at the Roadshow.
That alone was an extraordinary statement. But the real shock was still to come.
If you're going to insure it,
Insurance, okay.
I would insure it for at least $1 million.
Are you serious? Oh my. Holy smokes.
$1 million. For a handful of old baseball cards, one old letter, and a family story that had survived for more than a century. Because sometimes the greatest value isn't found in the object itself. It's found in the fact that it survived long enough to tell a chapter of history the world had nearly forgotten. If someone told you that an old cigar box sitting in the corner of a closet could contain a small fortune, most people probably wouldn't believe it. But that's exactly how this story begins. No safe, no climate-controlled storage room. Just an old box that had been forgotten for decades.
I found them in the cigar box that you see in the back of the closet.
Inside that box was a baseball card collection that even experienced collectors would love to own. And within minutes of examining it, the expert realized these were far from ordinary cards. This was a collection of 1,948 Leaf baseball cards, one of the most sought-after post-war baseball card sets ever produced. But the discovery that changed everything came down to a single name.
The rookie card of one of the most important people of the 20th century, Jackie Robinson.
Jackie Robinson, the man who broke Major League Baseball's color barrier and became one of the most influential figures in American sports history. Owning one of his rookie cards would already be remarkable. But the owner didn't have just one.
You got 3 of those.
Yeah.
3 rookie cards, all sitting inside an old cigar box. All surviving for decades with almost no one paying attention to them. And Robinson was only the beginning. The collection also included names like Ted Williams, Bob Feller, and Satchel Paige, legends who helped define an entire era of American baseball.
1948 was kind of one of the first years after the war that a card set was produced, so there were a lot of rookies in that set.
Okay.
As the appraisal continued, the value of the collection began climbing quickly, especially the Jackie Robinson cards.
Because these sell for between $15,000 and $20,000 each.
Oh my God.
Right?
Okay.
$15,000 to $20,000 for a single card. And that was only part of the collection. Then came the number that left the owner nearly speechless.
I would put an insurance estimate on just these 1948 leaf cards, the whole collection here, of $150,000.
$150,000, all from an old cigar box sitting in the corner of a closet. And that's what makes hidden treasure stories so fascinating. Because sometimes the most valuable thing in your house isn't locked away in a safe. It's simply waiting to be discovered after years of being forgotten. The Navajo Ute First Phase Blanket.
Nobody's ever looked at it that I'm aware of.
For generations, this blanket had simply been part of the family. The owner knew very little about it. He had heard that it might have been connected to Kit Carson and passed down through the family, but beyond that, it was just an old blanket that had always been there. What happened next was something he never expected.
Did you notice when you showed this to me that I kind of stopped breathing a little bit?
Yeah, you did.
I'm still having a little bit of trouble breathing here.
The expert's reaction said everything. The longer he looked, the more convinced he became that he was standing in front of one of the most important Native American textiles he had ever encountered on Antiques Roadshow.
And it's not just a chief's blanket, it's the first type of chief's blanket made.
This wasn't simply an old blanket. It was a first-phase chief's blanket woven by Navajo artisans for Ute leaders sometime between the 1840s and 1860s. Its design was strikingly simple. No elaborate patterns, no complicated decoration, yet that simplicity was exactly what made it so important.
This is Navajo weaving in its purest form. All of these things that we see later with diamonds and all kinds of different patterns comes much later than this. This is just pure linear design. This is the beginning of Navajo weaving.
In many ways, this textile represented the foundation of an entire weaving tradition. Even more remarkable was its condition. After more than a century and a half, it had survived in a state that few experts would have thought possible.
The condition of this is unbelievable. Unbelievable. We see these, we've got a little bit of damage over there. We have a very interesting thing here. This is almost like silk. It's made from hand-woven wool, but it's so finely done, it's like silk. Wow. It would repel water. And this here is dyed with indigo dyes. It was a very valuable dye at the time. And what's really interesting is right here, we have an old repair that was probably done in the 1860s. And it's done with raveled bayeta, which is in itself a very important thing in Navajo weaving. So all involved. It's an extraordinary piece of art. It's extremely rare. It is the most important thing that's come into the roadshow that I've seen.
Its age, rarity, and historical importance placed it in a category far beyond most antiques. Then came the question that changed the mood of the appraisal.
Are you a wealthy man, Ted?
No.
The answer drew a laugh, but only moments later, the true significance of the blanket became clear.
On a really bad day, this textile would be worth $350,000. On a good day, it's about $500,000.
Oh my God.
$500,000 for a blanket. Yet the most unforgettable part of the story came after the valuation.
I'm just laying on the back of a chair.
Well, sir, you have a national treasure.
For years, a national treasure had been resting on the back of a chair, and an entire family had been living alongside a piece of American history without ever realizing it. Sometimes, a treasure is not forgotten in a corner. Sometimes it has been close all along, held, played, and simply waiting for someone to call its true value by name. 1892 HF FARNY watercolor and gouache painting. What could possibly turn a picture once valued at only a few $100s into a masterpiece worth hundreds of thousands? This time, the answer began with a mosquito.
Not sure if it's a print or a painting, but when I got it, there was a mosquito underneath the glass. So I took it out to the front yard and I opened it up to get the mosquito out so I could take it with me to college. And then it kind of scared me a little. I closed it back up immediately because it looked like it might be real.
For years, the family believed this was nothing more than an ordinary print hanging above the grandmother's bed. Even previous appraisals never suggested otherwise. The picture was simply grouped with the household furnishings and quietly forgotten. Everything changed when a tiny mosquito prompted the owner to open the frame.
It was appraised in like a general house appraisal twice. In 1998, it was appraised as a print at $200, and in 2004, it was appraised at $250.
Twice it was appraised. Twice it was identified as a print worth only a few $100s. But a closer look by the Antiques Roadshow experts revealed something completely different. It was an original work by Henry Francois Farny, one of America's most celebrated painters of Native American life. Its outstanding composition, excellent condition, and highly desirable subject matter made it exactly the kind of painting collectors hope to find.
So if we were going to put this in an auction today, I would suggest an estimate of $200,000 to $300,000.
From just a few $100s to an auction estimate of $200,000 to $300,000. In an instant, every previous appraisal became meaningless.
Oh my God. That's so much. I don't even know what to say. Should I have left the mosquito in the back?
No, it's good that the bug wasn't there anymore.
A tiny mosquito unexpectedly became part of one of the most unforgettable appraisals in Antiques Roadshow history. Had the owner never opened the frame that day, the artwork might have remained nothing more than a print worth a few $100s. Instead, the family discovered they had owned an original Henry Francois Farny painting worth as much as $300,000. That's what makes Antiques Roadshow so fascinating. Sometimes all it takes is one small detail to completely change the story of a work of art. This piece began with a trip to Europe in 1969, when the owner was only 14 years old. His family stopped to visit one of his father's friends south of Paris. And by chance, that visit led directly to the family of Alexander Calder.
When I was 14, I traveled to Europe with my parents, and it turns out his friend was married to the daughter of Alexander Calder.
That detail makes the story much more than a simple line of provenance. As a young boy, he saw Calder inside his studio. He had seen Calder's hand affected by Parkinson's, but when the artist began working, that same hand became still. Then his 15th birthday arrived during that very trip, and the gift he received was not an ordinary souvenir.
I had my 15th birthday while we were there, and that was in July of 1969. And he presented me this sculpture as my 15th birthday present. I saw him working in his shop on something similar to this.
A sculpture given directly by Alexander Calder, and possibly made by him around the same time the owner had seen him working in the studio. For a work of art, provenance like that is almost impossible to improve. But the experts still had to examine the object itself, the structure, the movement, the signature, and Calder's place in 20th century art.
Calder is one of America's leading sculptors of the 20th century. And this is wonderful because you have the base and this amazingly balanced piece.
It is both stable and moving, a very Calder kind of balance, simple at first glance but carefully calculated in weight and motion. The piece has a monogram, it is handmade, and most importantly, the story behind it is almost unbelievably strong.
I've never heard of better provenance on something artistic than what you've given us. But it still has to be submitted to the Alexander Calder Foundation. They authenticate pieces.
Even with remarkable provenance, the art market still needs official authentication. But even before that final step, the expert gave a number that completely changed the mood of the case.
They're fairly rare, and especially in this size, in a gallery setting. this would be $250,000.
Wow. Jeez, that's amazing. I mean, it's probably worth more than that to me, just in memories, but that's spectacular.
Yeah.
$250,000 for a birthday gift. But for the owner, the memory may be worth even more than the number. This is not just a Calder. It is the moment a 15-year-old boy stepped into the world of a great artist and carried a piece of that memory with him for the rest of his life. If someone asked you to name the single firearm that changed the future of modern warfare, you'd probably think of a machine gun, an assault rifle, or some revolutionary weapon from the 20th century. You probably wouldn't think of a small revolver made nearly 200 years ago. But that's exactly where today's story begins.
I've had it over 40 years, and I've always collected antique arms.
And this pistol was made by Sam COLT in Paterson, New Jersey, and his patent was 1836. Yeah. I would say that this was actually made in the first months of 1837.
That was the breakthrough moment. Because if the expert was correct, this wasn't simply an early Colt revolver. It could be one of the very first examples produced after Colt's revolutionary design entered the world. And that changes everything. Today, firing 5 rounds without reloading sounds completely ordinary. In 1837, it was a different story. Most soldiers were still carrying firearms that fired once and then required a lengthy reload before they could shoot again. In a real fight, those extra seconds could mean the difference between survival and disaster.
And you would have 5 shots because it's a revolver. Yeah. Now, Colt didn't invent the revolver, he just perfected it.
And that perfection is what made this firearm so important. It proved that sustained firepower was possible. It showed what the future could look like. For many historians, firearms development can almost be divided into 2 periods, before revolvers like this and after them. The experts certainly believed its importance went that far.
In my opinion, this is the most important firearm ever made in the development and the history of firearms.
By now, there was only one question left. How much was something like this actually worth? And perhaps even more surprising, how much had the owner paid for it all those years ago?
So, how much did you buy it for?
Originally, I paid £150 for it.
Well, I have no reason to doubt that it's not a right one. If it is, then I think it's got to be £150,000.
From £150 to £150,000. A 1,000-fold increase. The kind of valuation that would shock almost any collector. But even that wasn't the biggest surprise. After decades spent examining historic firearms, the expert believed he was looking at the single most important firearm he had ever encountered on Antiques Roadshow. And somehow, this was only the beginning of our countdown. Sometimes the reason a collection ends up being worth tens of thousands of dollars isn't because someone found a hidden treasure, it's because someone unknowingly saved it from disappearing forever. This story begins with a collection of old baseball cards that had been sitting in the family for years. They had been around for so long that nobody really thought of them as anything extraordinary, and things might have stayed that way if one ordinary weekend hadn't changed everything.
One weekend while my husband was gone, I decided I'd just look at them, and as I'm sorting them, I'm like, oh my gosh, he's really got a nice collection.
The wife began organizing items around the house and gathering things that had been scattered in different places. Among them was this baseball card collection. At the time, it felt like nothing more than a routine household project, but only a month later, that simple decision would prove incredibly important.
And then the neat thing about it is that a month after I did that, our home got hit by a tornado and everything in that attic disappeared.
A tornado tore through the property. The house suffered devastating damage. Countless possessions were destroyed or lost entirely, yet somehow the cards survived, simply because they had been moved before the storm arrived.
But you had rescued these cards about a month prior?
Just a month prior, so it's like, wow.
Without that decision, this story might have ended before it ever began. Instead, the experts now had the opportunity to examine the collection card by card, revealing names like Ted Williams and Jackie Robinson, before arriving at the card that immediately captured everyone's attention. Mickey Mantle.
So last card we have is the 1952 Topps Mickey Mantle rookie card.
Right.
In the world of baseball cards, few names carry more weight than Mickey Mantle. A single card can dramatically change the value of an entire collection, which is why the owner's expression changed as soon as the expert began discussing its potential.
So this one, I assigned a numerical grade of 5. We put an auction value on that one of $30,000 to $40,000.
You're kidding. Seriously.
Yeah. The numerical grades are so important to the collectors.
Yeah.
And on some of the high-end cards, that numerical grade, the difference of a 5 or a 6 is tens of thousands of dollars.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But let's just say if I was too strict and it was to grade a 6, then we would be looking at $80,000 to $120,000.
Oh my God.
Even without reaching that higher grade, the collection's value was still remarkable. What had once been a group of cards sitting quietly in a family home had become a collection worth tens of thousands of dollars, and one that came dangerously close to being lost forever. Because sometimes a treasure isn't valuable simply because it's rare. Sometimes it's valuable because it survived. The Beatrice Cenci Micromosaic. At first glance, most people would assume this is simply a painted portrait. The closer you look, however, the more extraordinary it becomes.
I was amazed that something made from stone or ceramic could actually look like a painting.
These are actually glass.
What appears to be a painting is actually something entirely different. This is a micromosaic, a highly specialized art form created from thousands of tiny pieces of colored glass assembled so precisely that, from a distance, they become almost indistinguishable from brushstrokes.
Up to 15,000 different colors in glass would have been made to create micromosaic artwork.
That remarkable craftsmanship is only part of the story. The subject of the portrait is Beatrice Cenci, one of the most tragic and controversial figures in Italian history. According to the story that has survived through the centuries, she endured years of abuse at the hands of her father before becoming involved in his murder. She was later tried, convicted, and executed, transforming her into a figure viewed by many as both a victim and a criminal.
She was both a heroine as well as a murderer.
She's a tragic hero, absolutely.
Her dramatic story inspired generations of artists, writers, and poets throughout the 19th century. As the expert examined the plaque more closely, he discovered the signature of Moglia.
It was almost certainly done in Italy.
The Moglia family was among the finest makers of Italian micromosaics, and works of this scale rarely appear on the market.
The art of micromosaic on this sort of scale, which is actually very, very large for a mosaic, is incredibly rare and incredibly exciting to find on Antiques Roadshow.
That rarity explains why the expert could barely contain his excitement.
I nearly leapt over my colleague to look at this.
Then came the valuation.
I would think an insurance valuation of $85,000.
Cool.
Would be a fair price.
$85,000 for a work assembled from countless tiny fragments of glass. But what makes it truly memorable is the way a centuries-old Italian tragedy was preserved in a masterpiece that, at first glance, looks like nothing more than an ordinary painting. We've officially reached the top 10, and the next case begins in a way that will feel very familiar to longtime Antiques Roadshow viewers. An old box. A forgotten piece of jewelry, and a family that knew almost nothing about where it came from. After their mother passed away, the family began sorting through years of stored keepsakes and personal belongings. Among the various small boxes was a piece of jewelry that nobody could remember ever seeing before. It had spent years sitting quietly out of sight. No one knew its history, and no one was even certain it was genuine.
When our mother died, because my sister here, we went through sort of various little boxes and things of nothing in particular. And we each had a choice, and this was my choice. And I mean, I don't even know if it's real. We never saw it. My mother never wore it.
At that point, it sounded like the beginning of countless other family heirloom stories. But within moments, the expert knew he was looking at something far more interesting.
Yes, well, it certainly is real, actually. It's a most fascinating jewel.
The piece wasn't actually made during the 18th century. Instead, it belonged to the 19th century revival of 18th century French jewelry, a period when designers looked back to the elegance and craftsmanship of an earlier age for inspiration. Blue enamel, diamonds, rubies. an intricate gold framework, and hidden on the reverse was a small locket compartment designed to hold a photograph or even a lock of hair from someone dearly loved. This wasn't simply jewelry created to be worn, it was jewelry created to preserve memories.
Is inspired by 18th century France. But we can say with absolute confidence this isn't an 18th century jewel, it's an 18th century revival one. And blue enamel, diamonds, a little ruby in the front, and turn it over and there's a locket at the back.
But the surprises didn't end there. Accompanying the locket was a remarkable bee brooch created by La Cloche Frères, one of France's most prestigious jewelry houses and a direct competitor to Cartier during the golden age of French luxury jewelry.
It's absolutely there. They're a very distinguished firm running in competition with Cartier.
Set with Salon's sapphires, diamonds, ruby eyes, and brought to life through an incredibly dynamic design, the brooch quickly became the star of the appraisal.
And everybody wants this thing, honestly they do, and value is to do with measured want, that's all that value is, and I'm going to tell you that in measured want that's £10,000.
God. The locket didn't reach quite that level, but even it delivered a valuation that left the family stunned.
Bigger, but quite enough at, say, £4,500–5,000.
Not bad at all for a piece that spent years forgotten inside a family box. And it's exactly the kind of discovery that has made Antiques Roadshow famous for uncovering hidden treasures in the most unexpected places. Some objects are so small that most people would dismiss them as old makeup cases. But sometimes a compact can be worth more than a major piece of jewelry. This case began with 3 accessories that had been passed down through generations of the same family. At first glance, they looked like elegant little cases designed for evenings out. Then the name Cartier appeared. And after that came an even bigger surprise.
My mom's mother inherited them from her cousin. He got them from his parents, and I've now inherited them.
The appraiser started with the first compact. A Cartier design in 1/8, karat gold dating from around the 1940s. Elegant, refined, and created for fashionable evenings. Then he picked up the second piece. And the owner was immediately surprised to learn that it was Cartier too.
Let's start with the first one here, the Cartier. This would be the latest of the group, probably circa 1940–45.
Right.
And it has one little ruby set into the compact. The second one is Cartier also.
Oh, it is, okay.
This is from the Art Deco period.
At this point, many people would assume that the 2 Cartier pieces were the stars of the story. But the third item changed everything. It was a minaudière from Paris. And when the appraiser opened it, he immediately spotted the maker's name, Arnold Ostertag. A company less famous than Cartier, but regarded as every bit as talented.
And the first thing that I saw was its maker, Arnold Ostertag, out of Paris. They're not as well known as Cartier and Van Cleef & Arpels, they're neighbors.
Sure.
But they were every bit as talented.
Then the case opened to reveal a miniature world from the 1930s. Inside were a watch, a lighter, a lipstick compartment, a mirror, and a powder compartment. A luxury accessory designed to carry almost everything a woman might need for an elegant evening.
The case itself is 18 karat gold, and it opens to reveal the watch.
The watch, yeah.
Here is the lighter, and then the below section opens to reveal the lipstick.
Sure.
So once you take those 2 sections out, the case opens, and one compartment would be for her powder and a mirror.
Yeah.
Then came the valuations.
I would say an auction estimate, you would be looking at $3,000 to $5,000.
Wow.
The black enamel Art Deco Cartier case, conservative estimate because of the condition issue. I would say at auction $6,000 to $8,000.
Oh my gosh.
And this one, the Minaudière, is the star of the group. At auction, a conservative estimate would be $15,000 to $20,000.
That's amazing.
So it's really a wonderful collection.
Wow.
The first Cartier compact was valued at $3,000 to $5,000. The Art Deco Cartier case was estimated at $6,000 to $8,000. But the true star was the Ostertag Minaudière, with an auction estimate of $15,000 to $20,000.
Brought in part of a tea set, which I inherited. My mother passed away in 2006, so I've had them for the last 12 years. My father purchased it at auction in San Francisco around 1961 or 62. The one story that I gathered from speaking with my sister is that my dad picked this up, brought it home, and my mom was furious with him for spending the money on something not essential.
Some objects are once seen as unnecessary purchases, but many years later, those same objects reveal that someone may have noticed something valuable that everyone else missed. When the owner's father bought this silver tea set at an auction in San Francisco in the early 1960s, the first reaction in the family was not excitement. His mother was actually upset because she believed the money had been spent on something they did not really need. But the piece that once caused disagreement remained in the family for decades. And the real story only began when the expert examined the small marks underneath. Those marks revealed that this was not an ordinary silver set, but a piece of Japanese silver craftsmanship made by Konoike. That origin brought the story back to the Meiji period, a time when Japan expanded its connections with the world and its craftsmen began introducing their skills to an international audience. During this era, many pieces were not created only to be used. They were created to demonstrate the highest levels of craftsmanship. And this coffee pot and teapot showed that through every detail. At first glance, the shape may look familiar to Western eyes, but the decoration carries a distinctly Japanese identity. The dragons were not simply placed on the surface. The artist transformed them into part of the entire design, from the lines wrapping around the body to the handle to the feeling of movement throughout the piece. Combined with the hammered finish on the surface, every detail showed that this was not a mass-produced object, but the work of a highly skilled craftsman. But what made the story even more interesting was that these two pieces were only part of the original set. The family still had many other pieces from the tea service. After more than 100 years, when many silver sets have been separated or lost, having a large set survive together can make a significant difference.
This tea and coffee service is quite rare. They're in really good condition. The two objects you've brought here today, I would insure them together for $30,000.
Okay. Wow. That's a lot considering what else is still unreviewed. All right. I better get them insured.
Just the two pieces brought in were worth tens of thousands of dollars, while the rest of the collection had not even been examined yet. A random decision at an auction ended up preserving a piece of Japanese craftsmanship more than 100 years old. And sometimes the things one generation sees as unnecessary become the treasures that the next generation is lucky enough to inherit. The Cartier Citrine Jewellery.
Sometimes a jewel will give me that immediate head rush of excitement, and that's what these jewels have done to me.
Not every piece of jewelry makes an expert react before the appraisal has even begun. These pieces did. Sitting inside a red Cartier box were a brooch and a pair of earrings that had belonged to the owner's mother. For years, they were simply cherished family heirlooms. The owner remembered seeing her mother wear them, but never realized just how significant they might be. That changed the moment the Cartier name came into the conversation.
The red box with the Cartier signature inside, they are Cartier jewels. And they are both signed on the back.
The Cartier signature immediately caught the expert's attention. But the real surprise was their age. The family believed the pieces had been purchased in the 1970s. Instead, the expert identified them as being much older.
They are 40s jewels. Because of the austerity years, obviously with the war, you couldn't get the diamonds and the rubies and emeralds and sapphires. And so other stones took over.
These jewels dated from the 1940s, a period shaped by wartime shortages. With diamonds, rubies, emeralds, and sapphires becoming difficult to obtain, designers turned to alternative gemstones such as citrine, topaz, and aquamarine. Cartier embraced those materials and transformed them into bold, distinctive designs that remain highly collectible today. Although the earrings had been altered from clip-ons to pierced earrings, they still retained considerable value. The brooch, however, was the piece that truly captivated the expert.
This brooch, which I would run away, I would run away with. I just think it's spectacular. The earrings, because they've been altered, you'd be looking in a region of about £10,000. I would say you're probably looking in the region of around about £30,000.
Together, the family jewelry was worth around £40,000.
Goodness me, that is a lot more than I thought.
But for the owner, the true value extended beyond Cartier and beyond the citrine gemstones. These pieces still carried memories of her mother wearing them on special occasions, turning a remarkable collection of jewelry into an irreplaceable part of her family's story. Some objects seem like pirate treasure when you're a child. Years later, that same object can end up on Antiques Roadshow with a valuation reaching $150,000. That's exactly what happened with this cuff.
Well, my mother gave it to me as a wedding present about 20 years ago. And before that, it had been a gift to my mother from her great-aunt Helen Hayes.
Well, why don't you read how she...
So my mother's name is Annie, and she says, "Darling Annie, your Uncle Charlie picked this as a gift from me years ago. I want you to have it, sort of as a gift of love from both of us. Devotedly, Aunt Helen."
The story was already compelling because of the note that accompanied it. But for years, the owner had little idea what she actually possessed. Some people suggested it was merely costume jewelry. One person even offered her $1,000 after seeing a photograph. Fortunately, she turned the offer down.
I had a friend who sort of intimated that it was costume jewelry and the stones were glass. And then I showed someone a photograph of it, and they said, "Well, you know, those stones, I think they're real, and I'll give you $1,000 for it." And I said, "It's a family heirloom. I don't think I'd sell it for $1,000.
As the research began, the appraiser connected the design to two legendary names in fashion history: Verdura, Chanel, and the famous Maltese cross cuffs that appeared in iconic portraits of Coco Chanel herself.
One of the first pieces he made for her was a pair of Maltese cross bracelets that looked just like this. And she wore them, one on each wrist, and there are a lot of very famous portraits of Coco Chanel wearing these Verdura designed cuffs.
But that was only half the story. Authentic Chanel cuffs from this period are already incredibly rare. This example carried an even bigger surprise. The stones were not imitation gems.
The costume pieces from the 1930s are so rare. When they do come up for auction, the costume jewelry collectors go crazy for them. In 2016, a Verdura for Chanel bracelet that was enamel, a different design, not the iconic Maltese cross, with all faux stones, and it sold for $100,000.
Diamonds, sapphires, rubies, aquamarines, emeralds, and gold were all incorporated into a single cuff. Combined with its provenance through Helen Hayes, it became a piece that stood far outside the ordinary.
To say that this is a rare piece is an understatement. Being as rare as it is from the 1930s and having all real stones, we think a very conservative auction estimate would be at least $100,000 to $150,000.
Goodness. Oh my word.
From a piece once mistaken for costume jewelry and offered only $1,000, this cuff was finally restored to its proper place in history. A genuine treasure carrying the names of Helen Hayes, Chanel, and Verdura.
Sunlight and gold, look at it. It has to be gold.
Beautiful.
Looking like that, doesn't it? What a wonderful, wonderful object. And it's a gold box, isn't it?
Yeah.
But the gold box is secondary to its real function.
At first glance, this object immediately catches attention with its shining gold surface and detailed decoration. But what truly impressed the expert was not just its luxurious appearance. Inside this small box was one of the most complex creations made by 19th century craftsmen, a singing bird automaton. It combined the art of jewelry making with miniature clock making, where every movement was powered by an incredibly detailed mechanical system. And the clue inside revealed where this special creation came from.
And inside we can see the name of the supplier, and he's J.M. Badolet and Sons of Geneva. And that's sometimes a clue to people who know about these things that this is going to be an automaton.
Geneva has long been a famous center for high-quality watches and mechanical creations. In the early 1800s, automatons like this were considered symbols of wealth and exceptional craftsmanship. But the true value of this box was only revealed when the mechanism inside came to life.
It's rather exciting moment. Shall we give it a go?
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. Here we go. Oh, look at that.
Once the box was activated, it showed why these creations once amazed collectors. Inside was a mechanical bird designed to imitate life, from tiny movements to sound. The fact that such a complex mechanism could still function after more than 2 centuries is what made the object so special.
And he's made of hummingbirds' feathers.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
And his beak is of ivory, and he's got little ruby eyes, I think. And it's a miracle of craftsmanship and clockmaking skill, really.
Every small detail proved that this was not just a gold box, but a rare piece of mechanical art. With precious materials, complex craftsmanship, and the ability to still work after hundreds of years, it became one of the most unique discoveries on Antiques Roadshow. The FABERGÉ flower.
We call it the regimental jewel. The regiment, the Worcestershire Yeomanry, later to become the Queen's Own Worcestershire Hussars, was formed in 1794 to protect these shores against a Napoleonic invasion.
At first glance, it's just a small flower displayed in a clear vase. But from the moment the expert saw it, he knew he was looking at something extraordinary. Known as the regimental jewel, this piece belongs to the Worcestershire Yeomanry. Its story dates back to the Boer War, when soldiers left home to fight overseas. Before they departed, they were given silk pear blossoms to wear on their hats as a reminder of the county they were leaving behind. After the war, the Countess of Dudley commissioned Fabergé to create a permanent version of that flower.
This looks for all the world like a glass vase, and there's a stratagem here that it's filled with water, and this is the meniscus, the top of the water, but in actual fact it isn't. It's a solid block of what is apparently glass, but it's certainly not. It's stone. It's rock crystal. The flowers are made of enameled silver and tiny silver stamens, but in the center there's a dewdrop of diamond.
The closer it was examined, the more remarkable it became. The vase isn't glass at all, but carved rock crystal. The stem is made of gold. The blossoms are crafted from enameled silver. At the center of each flower sits a tiny diamond dewdrop. Even the leaves are carved from Siberian jade. But its true value goes far beyond the precious materials. This isn't simply a Fabergé masterpiece. It serves as a symbol connecting generations of soldiers from the same regiment.
I think it provides that link for all the different ages of soldiers that have soldiered with the regiment and are intending in the future to soldier with the regiment.
I find Fabergé things on the Antiques Roadshow, but nothing of this scale. And I can tell you that the size of the object, the sophistication of the object, the provenance of the object brings it very, very close to only 2 other flower studies in the United Kingdom which are in the Royal Collection. Given what are the qualifications I've already put on this object, that it is a towering masterpiece of the goldsmith's art by the most famous goldsmith of the 20th century.
Although he had appraised many Fabergé pieces before, the expert said he had never encountered anything like this on Antiques Roadshow. And then came the moment everyone was waiting for. Can you guess what it was worth?
This is worth £1 million.
Really? It certainly isn't
No.
for sale.
Well, that's the
I'm
rub.
just a custodian.
I know.
But for its owner, this was never something to be sold. It is a piece of regimental history, preserved on behalf of those who served in the past and those who will serve in the future.
I remember as a child, I would go to my grandfather's house. This was something that was always sort of proudly displayed in the living room. His dad had passed it to him, and then it passed to my dad and passed to me.
Are you a Baltimore family?
I'm a Baltimore family,
Okay.
correct.
Well, this is fabulous Baltimore silver. So we have a teapot, a coffee pot, and a covered sugar.
Some objects stay in a family for so long that they become part of its memories. Everyone knows they are important, but not everyone knows the real story they have been carrying. For the owner of this silver tea set, it was not an expensive antique locked away for protection. It was something he remembered seeing as a child, proudly displayed in his grandfather's living room. Through the generations, the silver set was passed from his great-grandfather to his grandfather to his father and eventually to him. But what the family had preserved was not just an old silver set. It was a piece of American silver history from more than 200 years ago. When the expert examined it, he identified it as Baltimore silver, created by Charles Louis Boehm, a silversmith working during the early 19th century. At that time, silver coffee and tea services were not simply objects used to serve drinks. They represented status, refinement, and the social position of the people who owned them. A large silver service displayed in a home was a way for a family to show its taste and success. But what made this set special was not only its size, it was also the period and design behind it. Created during the Federal period, the set reflected the influence of European neoclassical design, focusing on balance, elegance, and carefully controlled details. Instead of relying on excessive decoration, its value came from proportion, craftsmanship, and the subtle quality of every line. The engraved details and family monogram also showed that it once belonged to a specific family, helping preserve the story behind the piece. For collectors, antique silver is not judged only by the amount of metal it contains. What matters more is who made it, when it was created, and the journey it has survived. After more than 2 centuries, many silver services have been separated, lost, or disappeared completely. But this Charles Louis Boehm set remained together and continued passing through generations of the same family.
The scale is fabulous and a maker that is very desirable. And for insurance purposes, I would look at a figure at around $30,000.
Wow, that's amazing. Do you think it's something that can actually be used? Can it be used with coffee and tea in it?
Absolutely.
I'm not sure.